What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Challengers, the new romantic sports drama film from Luca Guadagnino, starring Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Faist. This film was supposed to come out last September, but of course was strike delayed, much like Zendaya's other big film of this year that was delayed into 2024, of course, that being Dune Part 2. Zendaya is back as the star of Challengers, and as we know, Zendaya, one of the biggest stars we have in Hollywood at this point. But this is also a really big look for Josh O'Connor, probably his most significant role since breaking out on The Crown. And of course, Mike Faist, this is definitely his first big role since the big breakthrough in West Side Story a few years ago. So a lot was riding on this film. Of course, Luca Guadagnino, as we know, has been pretty prolific recently. Of course, Bones and All with Timothée Chalamet not that long ago. Challengers is an epic movie. I absolutely loved it. I thought this was so propulsive, so tension-filled, so erotic. Like, everything about this movie, I think, is very successful. The idea of having Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Mike Faist in a love triangle, great idea. It's effective. But then also having that be around a movie centered around tennis and the relationship that is required in the game of tennis. Having these two guys competing for the affection, the approval of Zendaya's character, Tashi. It really works. I think the non-chronological narrative of the screenplay actually is quite effective in terms of giving the audience new information. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have this awesome electronic techno bass thumping score that comes in key moments. The sexual tension, both between Zendaya and the two guys, but also between Faist and O'Connor. There is certainly some homoeroticism here, but I think it's all super well earned because it's just, I think, a really sexy, crazy fun time. And the star power is just very palpable on screen as well. Also, something that was by no means a given was the fact that the tennis portrayed on screen is actually really propulsive. Like, the sports angle of this movie looks great. We jump around with ball POVs, floor POVs, watching the tennis from underneath the court, having the ball come right at the camera, right at you as the viewer. It looks really cool, and I'd say it's a pretty genuinely successful sports film, even if it's clearly more of a character drama first. Zendaya is really convincing as Tashi Duncan, this, kind of young teenage phenom tennis player who is clearly on the track to professional stardom, but wants to go to Stanford first. And when we watch the introduction, the boys get to Tashi. Of course, Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor, they play Art Donaldson and Patrick Zwig, respectively, who have known each other a long time. Coming up, they're actually doubles partners, in the junior circuit, and they come to meet Tashi, and they very quickly, both are so enamored with her. But just watching her as a phenom, and then seeing her off the court, and there's just a aura to her. And it's kind of funny watching them both simp over her at this party, and so overtly, so over the top almost, but also kind of honestly, chase and lust after her. And when they kind of half-assed invite her over to the hotel room they're sharing, and then she actually comes by when they're both in this messy room, half clothed, and really funny laugh moment. But the introduction to Tashi is quite effective, and the relationship between Patrick and Art is done quite effectively as well, because again, we're getting this non-linear screenplay. So we realize early on in the movie that Tashi is no longer a professional player. She's actually married to Art, who is the professional player. He already has 1 Grand Slams. He is a legitimate tennis pro trying to complete the World Slam by winning a U.S. Open. And meanwhile, Patrick is not at that level. He is still a professional tennis player, but just kind of approaching has-been status, going after qualifying tournaments to try and actually make it into a U.S. Open. Clearly, things have changed. And, as we learn how things go, where actually Tashi and Patrick start dating first, and then Tashi's injury almost becomes this, this point of diversion where they both they separate, and then Art and Tashi end up linking up, and we learn about why these things happen. And I think the idea of Tashi being so driven, so having such a desire to win, that when that's taken away from her with her on the court injury, which is really harrowing to watch, when that's taken away from her and Art proposes Tashi being his coach, you kind of understand that Tashi perspective, where this is someone so driven, so focused on this one thing that she can't have it for herself. she will make sure it happens for someone else, and then she can have a piece of that. And having that be kind of the focus of their relationship, which is increasingly becoming loveless as Art is falling out of love with the pursuit of tennis greatness. Like, I thought it was really, really knockout, right? And, throw that back to how Patrick and Tashi kind of split up at Stanford, where they have this fight and they kind of have a difference of opinion of what they're both seeking. And yet, the end of the film, where you have Patrick and Tashi connecting before this one challenger tournament, and man, I think the way the movie ends and the way it sets up its ending is really knockout. But it's just the premise of Tashi sending Art to a challenging qualifying tournament that's clearly beneath him as a established successful pro, to kind of get his confidence back, because she needs to basically build him back up. And then by chance, as far as we understand, Patrick's also in this tournament, and if they both advance their sides of the bracket, they will face each other. And obviously they've had a falling out significantly, as we learn about, up until that point. So I think it's like a really fun build up to that final tournament, as we go back and forth through time and learn about the character relationships across this dense love triangle, and Tachi doing what she has to do to get Patrick on board with letting him win, but not giving up, but actually bringing the best out of him. And what that ends up being, amazing callback to what the tell was on the racket. I saw that coming in the moment, and I was getting ready to pump my fist. I was like, do the tell, show the ball. And it's so satisfying the way that goes. And then Art is able to win the match because he's so fucking pumped up out of his anger at this betrayal from his wife. I think it's knockout stuff. Zendaya really, I think, quite at home in this role as Tashi, where she starts out as this electric, room commanding phenom who's also a great athlete. She's great in that sequence of it, great in the Stanford sequence, but also she's really good as this, athlete turned mogul slash, power wife slash, power mom, right? Really right at home in that as well. Mike Faist, I think, deserves a lot of credit for, he kind of got swole for the modern day stuff. He looks pretty ripped. He's kind of more of a wiry guy. And his, I think, precociousness in the beginning of the film, the beginning of the chronology leading up to the present day stuff, where he's able to really command his apathy to a lot of what's going on. But what's always consistent in that performance is his just complete inability to not always need the approval of Tashi. And I think that's done really well. And then Josh O'Connor, I never watched The Crown, so I just kind of knew of what people said about him. I hadn't really seen him in too many things, but man, he does a great job playing this charismatic dirtbag, basically, as Patrick. And I think it's a pretty interesting character in the sense that this is a guy from a very wealthy family who was in a wealthy sport growing up in tennis, and then he's basically slumming it, not because he has to, but because he can. Basically, he just doesn't ask his family for any support at all. So he's literally on Tinder swiping, liberally, just so that he can hopefully go to bed with someone and have a place to stay at night. He's the one sleeping in his car at the court before the tournament he's participating in. And yet, he's able to see through Art and Tachi's relationship, leading up to, I think, again, a really satisfying, third act. Also, I think Faist and O'Connor, as tennis performers, O'Connor has more of this hunch. He's abnormal as a athlete, whereas Faist is obviously this very wealthy professional guy, and he has this almost robotic poise to him. I think they're both great in the hotel room scene, and that is a pretty sexy scene, honestly. And I think Guadagnino's camera, the way he kind of fixes on Zendaya as she basically coerces the two boys into making out together, and then she just leaves, but puts the tension on them of whoever wins in that youth tournament tomorrow, she'll actually give her number to, right? And it's suggested that that's how Patrick and her started dating. And I think there's a sex-ish scene between Tashi and Patrick at Stanford. But for a movie that I think is so sexy, so lust-filled, it's actually kind of chaste in that regard. Like we don't see like a hardcore sex scene or anything like that. It's just kind of like a close up of Zendaya's ass, I guess. With like that's kind of it, I guess you could say. Despite all that, like I think the sexual tension is so consistent throughout the movie, and I think that's good enough. Honestly, I probably could have used more sex in the movie, like if you really wanted to commit. But that's not really Luca Guadagnino's bag if you think about his other stuff, right? It's not like Call Me by Your Name was super explicit either. I think to me it's such a win for kind of everyone involved. I think the three acting performances are all perfect, and the chemistry, the tension, the love triangle, everything's so convincing, so great. But also the physical aspects of it being a tennis movie also effective. And Luca Guadagnino, this very much being in like his narrative, his storytelling type of bag, but then backing it up with the direction of the action of the sport, you know, while also still having all of the character drama that he's clearly more interested in. Like it's all there. Like I think it really works. And Zendaya, to me, at this moment, she is in my two favorite movies of 2024 between Dune Part 2 and Challengers. And we'll see how the rest of the year goes. But I mean, she's one of our superstars for a reason. I think she's great. And this was just a really great time. You don't really get movies like this, as people like to say a lot, but it's true. Like, when do you get like a sexy love triangle tennis movie? Like, what do you even compare this to in recent memory? Let me know though. What did you think of Challengers? What did you like most about it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.